I want to share some information with you today that I think is going to genuinely stop you in your tracks because once you see the numbers laid out clearly, the picture they paint is both remarkable and deeply troubling at the same time. We are talking about a 24.4% cumulative increase to Social Security benefits over the last 6 years, and we are going to talk about why that number, as impressive as it sounds on paper, tells a story that is almost the complete opposite of what you would expect. This affects every single person receiving benefits administered by the Social Security Administration: retirement, disability, SSDI, survivor benefits, spousal benefits, SSI, and yes, VA and RRB benefits as well. Roughly 72 million people. And I think what I am about to walk you through is going to make a lot of things click into place that have probably felt confusing or frustrating for a long time. Let me put this screenshot up on the screen right here because I want you to actually see the numbers rather than just hear me talk about them, because seeing them lined up year by year is where the real impact of this hits. Here is the COLA breakdown from 2020 through 2026. In 2020, the COLA was 1.3%. In 2021, it was 5.9%. In 2022, it was 8.7%, the highest we had seen in over 4 decades. In 2023, it came down to 3.2%. In 2024, it was 2.5%. And right now, in 2026, we are at 2.8%. When you add all of those together across 6 consecutive years, the cumulative total is 24.4%, nearly a quarter increase to benefits over 6 years. And if you heard that number without any context, you might think Social Security beneficiaries have been doing pretty well. You might think that kind of cumulative increase would translate into real financial stability and genuine relief for the tens of millions of people depending on these payments to cover their basic expenses every month. You would be wrong. And the gap between what those numbers suggest and what is actually happening in the daily financial lives of beneficiaries is exactly what I want to spend this video digging into, because it matters enormously, and it is not getting nearly the attention it deserves. Here is the reality on the ground. Social Security beneficiaries right now, particularly the lowest income beneficiaries, are getting financially squeezed harder than at any point in recent memory. The reports coming out consistently month after month are documenting that seniors and people with disabilities on fixed incomes are falling behind at a historic pace, not catching up, falling further behind. And when you hear that alongside the fact that benefits have cumulatively increased by 24.4% over the same period, the obvious question is, how can both of those things be true simultaneously? How can benefits have gone up by nearly a quarter while beneficiaries are simultaneously experiencing the worst financial hardship in years? The answer lies in what the COLA is actually measuring versus what people are actually spending their money on. The COLA, the cost of living adjustment, is calculated using something called the CPI-W, which stands for the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. The Bureau of Labor Statistics produces this number every month by tracking price changes across a wide basket of goods and services. And I want to be direct with you about something I have been saying for years now. Those reported inflation numbers are highly aggregated. They mix together price categories that have moved dramatically with price categories that have barely moved at all, and the blended result consistently comes out lower than what people who are actually spending money in the real world are experiencing. The BLS number for inflation and what you feel every time you pay your rent, buy your groceries, fill a prescription, or pay a utility bill are genuinely different things. And the people who feel that gap most acutely are the people who spend virtually all of their income on exactly those categories because they have no cushion, no investments, no alternative income sources. They are spending every dollar on the basics, and the basics have gone up in a way that the official numbers do not fully capture. Here's the framework I have been using and advocating for years. Whatever the official inflation rate is, double it. That is closer to what real inflation has actually been running at for the items that matter most to lower-income households: housing, food, utilities, medical costs, transportation. Those 5 categories, that is where fixed-income seniors and people with disabilities spend the overwhelming majority of every dollar they receive. Not on electronics that have gotten cheaper, not on clothing that has seen modest price increases, not on the wide range of consumer goods that help bring the blended CPI number down. The basics, the non-negotiables, the things you cannot choose not to buy because you genuinely need them to survive. And those are precisely the categories that have seen the most aggressive price increases over the last several years. So if the official COLA has been tracking at a cumulative 24.4% over 6 years, and if real inflation in the categories that matter most to this population has been running at roughly double that rate, then real inflation over this period has been closer to 48.8%, nearly 50% over 6 years for the stuff that fixed income beneficiaries actually spend their money on. Housing costs in many parts of the country have exploded. Grocery prices are dramatically higher than they were in 2020. Utility bills have surged. Medical costs, including prescription prices, have continued to climb. Transportation costs have been volatile and remain elevated. And through all of that, the COLA has been tracking against a blended number that does not fully weight those categories the way a low-income beneficiary's actual spending does. The result is a purchasing power gap that has been growing year after year, and the 24.4% cumulative increase that sounds impressive in a headline translates in practice to benefits that are buying meaningfully less than they were 6 years ago in real terms. Now, I want to be clear that not every beneficiary is in the same situation. The financial reality for someone receiving $3,000 to $3,500 or more per month in Social Security benefits is genuinely different from someone receiving $800 or $900 a month. The higher benefit recipient has more room to absorb price increases. They can handle a spike in grocery costs or a higher utility bill without it immediately threatening their ability to cover rent or medication. Someone receiving under $2,000 a month, and that describes roughly half of all Social Security beneficiaries, does not have that buffer. Every price increase comes directly out of something else in their budget. Every additional dollar spent on food is a dollar not spent on a prescription. Every increase in the electric bill is a dollar not available for groceries. It is a zero-sum situation, and it has been getting tighter year after year, even as the COLA adjustments came through. There is also a specific issue that I want to highlight because it has generated a lot of comments and questions from people in this community over the last several months, and it deserves a clear and direct answer. In 2026, the Medicare Part B premium increased by 9.6%. The COLA for 2026 was 2.8%. Let that comparison land for a second. The premium for Medicare Part B went up at almost 4 times the rate of the benefit increase. And because the Medicare Part B premium is deducted directly from Social Security payments, the net effect is that a significant portion of the COLA increase was effectively canceled out before it ever reached beneficiaries as spendable income. For someone receiving a monthly benefit of $1,000, the 2.8% COLA added about $28 to their monthly payment, but the 9.6% Medicare Part B premium increase added roughly $17 to $18 to their monthly deduction. So the actual net increase in money available to spend was approximately $10 per month, $10, or not 28, 10. After the Part B premium took its share, the real-world benefit increase for many lower-income beneficiaries was a fraction of what the headline COLA number suggested. And the lower your benefit amount, the more devastating that dynamic is proportionally, because a flat dollar increase in the Part B premium represents a larger percentage of a smaller check. This is not an abstract policy issue. This is the lived reality for tens of millions of people trying to figure out every single month how to make the math work with an income that is not keeping pace with the expenses it is supposed to cover. And when lawmakers stand up and talk about the affordability crisis, when they use the word affordability as their central talking point for 2026, and then fail to take any meaningful action to address the gap between what benefits provide and what basic living actually costs, that is not just a policy failure. It is a broken promise to the largest and most consistently engaged voting population in the entire country. So what are we actually calling for here? The proposal is straightforward and grounded directly in the numbers I have been laying out. We are calling for back pay equivalent to an additional 24.4% increase above and beyond what beneficiaries have already received through the COLA adjustments. The reasoning is that the official COLA has tracked at 24.4% cumulatively over 6 years, while real inflation for the goods and services that Social Security beneficiaries actually depend on has been running at roughly double that rate. The back pay would represent an acknowledgement of that gap and a partial correction of the purchasing power that has been eroded over this period. Now, does every single beneficiary need this equally? No. Someone receiving $4,000 a month is in a fundamentally different position from someone receiving $900 a month, and the relief should be targeted accordingly. The focus needs to be on the individuals living on benefits under $2,000 a month, the people who are genuinely struggling to cover the basics and for whom this gap between official inflation and real-world inflation is not an abstract statistic, but a daily grinding financial reality. And here is the part that I keep coming back to on the funding question, because I know that is the first objection lawmakers reach for when proposals like this come up. They point to the trust fund. They talk about solvency. They raise concerns about drawing down reserves that are already under pressure. And look, those are legitimate concerns when we are talking about structural changes to the benefit formula that get paid out of the trust fund indefinitely. But here is the thing. The president has been publicly and proudly discussing the hundreds of billions of dollars in tariff revenue that the federal government has been collecting. In 2025 alone, over $264 billion came in through tariff duties. In January 2026, another $30 billion plus. He has been using these numbers as a demonstration of his administration's economic performance. All right, then, if there is genuinely that much money flowing into the federal government through these mechanisms, then directing a portion of it toward the Americans who have absorbed the most financial pain over the last several years while living on fixed incomes that failed to keep pace with real inflation is not only economically defensible, it is morally and politically obvious. You cannot brag about record revenue and simultaneously tell the most financially vulnerable people in the country that there is no money available to address a demonstrable gap between their benefits and their actual cost of living. Those two positions cannot coexist honestly. And the midterm election context makes this even more pressing. Every member of the House is up for election in November. A significant portion of the Senate is on the ballot as well. The Social Security beneficiary population votes at extraordinarily high rates. They pay attention. They remember. If lawmakers spend the first several months of 2026 talking about the affordability crisis as their central concern, while simultaneously doing nothing concrete to address the financial hardship facing the tens of millions of Americans living on Social Security benefits, that is a combination that has historically ended careers. The window to act before this becomes a defining electoral issue is not infinite. It is closing. I want to hear your perspective on all of this because the voice of this community genuinely matters in this conversation. Do you feel that beneficiaries are owed an additional 24.4% back payment to compensate for the real inflation that has been running at roughly double the official COLA rate over the last 6 years? Do you think the double-it framework for estimating real inflation resonates with what you have actually experienced in your day-to-day spending over this period? And where do you fall on the question of whether this should be targeted specifically to lower-income beneficiaries, those receiving under $2,000 a month, or whether it should apply more broadly? Drop all of that in the comments below. I read every comment that comes through this channel, and on a topic like this, where the stakes are this real for this many people, your perspective is not just welcome, it is important. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring about this, and I will see you in the next one.